And you've got both of us here.
All right, excellent. Good morning.
Morning, Joe. How are you?
Nice to meet you.
And you?
Looks like we got some dangerous terrain back there. It's one of my favorite metaphors whenever I explain anything that could become disastrous. I just can't get away from the Titanic. I don't know why.
Exactly.
It's hard. It's hard. It's just
No,
so big in there, right?
I know. And I've been to, they had a big museum in Branson, Missouri. I'm in Kansas City, Missouri.
Yeah.
And just,
Everything's up to date there, I hear. I bet you never heard that one before, right?
yeah, I know. But it was crazy just to go through all of the relics and stories, and it's like it's a never-ending quagmire, that whole thing. It's wild.
Yeah.
Yeah.
you
It's
know
really fun.
well,
Um,
it's
Ironically, I was born in outside of Kansas City, Missouri,
we're at
Jefferson City.
Jefferson City, yeah, the capital. Jefferson City's kind of, it's a little wonky these days. I don't know why, but it just seems like it's a little bit worn out, run down. Maybe the ego of the politicians have just seeped out into the streets. I don't know.
My
Just
mom moved to Florida when I was 1 year old because she hated snow and she grew up in Florida. So I didn't really see much of it, but
Okay. Well, I took one of the first trips I ever took my son on when he was born. He was about one. We took a train trip down to Jeff City, and it was fun. So
Mm.
it was
nice.
cool. So where are you coming out of?
We're in Indianapolis, Indiana.
Okay, cool. Right on. So we're kind of here in the Midwest a little bit. We're
Yeah.
somewhat neighbors,
Yeah,
when you're talking about America, it's so big.
for
But
sure.
it's great to meet you. And I want to begin our conversation before we get into your work. The last 3.5 years was quite a thing with COVID. How did you get through it, and how did it change you?
So our story is a little different than the average story because being professors, like education took off.
Yeah.
So we actually launched our book, The Titanic Effect, in June of 2019. By February of 2020, we had decided we were going to do a whole publicity tour and speaking engagements and all that. So we had that rolling, right? But there were going to be no speaking engagements. But we ended up that first year of the pandemic, we were crazy busy. So we were doing webinars, podcasts. We were doing a lot of consulting with small businesses. How do we pivot? I mean, it just seemed like we spent almost all day, every day on Zoom, and bunches of people were home with nothing to do. So all of our classes were totally full. That
Yep.
fall of 2020, I taught over 200 students.
Wow.
One
Now,
fall quarter.
we were very fortunate, especially compared to like the K-12 teachers who were adjusting to a completely
Right.
new world. We've been teaching hybrid for 15 plus years. We have an online MBA program that's highly ranked, and we both taught in that program. So we were pretty used to using technology and delivering virtual education, and that was very fortunate for us, that it wasn't as big a pivot as it was for our colleagues in other age ranges and other schools.
My day job is as an IT technician for a school district here in Kansas
Oh,
City. So I never stopped. It was cleaning
Oh, man.
devices, getting everything ready. But I will
yeah.
tell you real quick, you talked about launching in February 2020. My dad, we used to watch the Chiefs. He called them the Griefs. And it wasn't until St. Mahomes came into town on his
Right.
white horse. But they always used to joke around that if the Chiefs finally break this 50-year cycle and win the Super Bowl, the world's going to come to an end. And after the parade, it did. So there you go. Be really careful
what you wish for.
Yeah, exactly. So let's get to the essence. Obviously, you have the book. Obviously, you teach. If you were in front of a bunch of third graders and they looked up at you and said, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How would you answer them?
Um, hmm. I would say we're teachers. That's their best frame of reference. It's funny because we have students who are older than we are. We have students who have children of their own, and we'll run into them, and their kids just can't get their heads around. Wait, he's your teacher?
Yeah.
Because we're treating them like friends and colleagues, right?
Yeah.
But again, as a frame of reference, teachers, and then we believe, and it may sound corny, but we like to help innovators realize their dreams and potential.
Yeah.
And there is an educational. Now, there are a lot of other things that go into being a successful entrepreneur, as you know. But there are also some opportunities to learn and some tools and techniques to help you better navigate uncertainty. And that's what we try and do, whether we're teaching 55-year-old physicians or 18-year-old undergrads.
But also we do talk to kids that age. So we've both been on a nonprofit board here called the Fight for Life Foundation that was created by one of the cults to teach social emotional learning in schools. And, we've gone into the school and done sessions with the kids. And one of the things we did is teach them how to do lemonade stands. I mean, that's a great entrepreneurial thing for kids in elementary school.
Yeah. So my wife's a fifth grade teacher in the district. So the kids always freak out. They're like, wait, hold on a second. So, because I have to come in and fix things, and they always have to try to put the dots together, trying to figure out what's going on here. Because you just don't think when you're that age that, teachers eat and drink and sleep and do things and exist like regular humans. Some mystical thing.
It cracks them up when we come in as a couple. You're like,
yeah.
Are you married to him? Oh, yes, I am married to him.
I was just telling my IT director this morning that this weekend, my wife's really popular in the district, and she's been here for, a couple decades. We went to a wedding at our Renaissance Festival for one of her students this weekend. And, of course, there was other kids there, and it's just like, sometimes she's just kind of like, she wonders why she does it because it's gotten so difficult.
Right.
But when that happens, it kind of validates the entire mission,
Absolutely.
For sure.
So it's a good thing. So where are you all originally from? And when you were in the third grade and you had somebody talking to you, what was your dream to grow up and become?
Go ahead.
So I grew up in Florida, and I went to school in Boston at MIT, and then I moved to DC for my first job, and that's where I met him. And I honestly was a fairly precocious third grader. I remember third grade, I was fairly new to my school. I was trying to learn all the kids, and that was the year I joined Girl Scouts. And I remember walking door to door selling 1,000 boxes of Girl Scout cookies. So I was a talker then, and I didn't know that would lead to a career in marketing, but my mom was a teacher, and I thought I probably was going to do something in the teaching realm.
Okay.
So my origin, I grew up in New Jersey, went to school in Virginia, and then again met Kim in DC at our first consulting firm out of college. There were probably two things that were in my mind when I was at that age. One was I wanted a job or career where I could not wear long pants as much as possible. That's like as high as my aspirations were.
Yeah.
But I also, so we went to the Jersey Shore every summer, and I was that kid on the corner selling newspapers and then mowing people's lawns in the spring and the fall. So I always was getting involved in, looking back on it, what was kind of an entrepreneurial thing. We'd have a snow day and I was cheering because I could go out and make $20 shoveling 4 walks. And ended up, becoming a professor I study entrepreneurship. I teach entrepreneurs of all ages. And it's a great opportunity to engage with people who are doing the equivalent of that, but at a much higher and more complicated level.
So coming from coasts, coming from heavily populated cities, what is it like to come to Indiana? I mean, what kind of culture shock was that?
I tell you, the first week we went to Bloomington for our doctoral training, and the first week there was a big article in the local paper saying, Bloomington crests 10% of minority population or something, something similar. And we were like,
all minorities,
all minorities,
Wow.
like, holy cow.
Yeah.
Where have we landed? But honestly, it's been a great ride. We raised our kids here. We spent a few years in Madison, Wisconsin. And then when we came back to IU, we resettled in the Indianapolis area, which is a diverse city in many ways. But it is different. And just a quick aside, but some interesting kind of positives and negatives. People are very welcoming. It's very easy to get plugged into the community. People are very supportive, but people are also very conflict averse. So no one will tell you your baby is ugly. So entrepreneurs are constantly walking around going, everybody loves my idea, potential
Yeah.
customers. And then we're like, okay, did you get a check, right? Did you get a
Yeah.
letter of commitment? Well, no, not yet, but they love it. Whereas in New Jersey, it is not a problem to say, "Oh, your baby is ugly."
Yeah.
and
Right.
and people are very direct about that. And innovation requires some degree of conflict, productive conflict, but it requires people being straightforward with each other about an idea and what works and doesn't work for them.
So the one I remember, I was reading a magazine while I was getting my hair cut, and the hairdresser saw over my shoulder and said, "Oh my God, that is the ugliest looking food I've ever seen." It was some Washington, D.C. restaurant, whatever. And I was like, "Oh, girl, I like it, and I would pay extra for it."
Yeah. Yeah.
But it
Yeah.
looks funny.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. The one thing that's fascinating about the American history book is that capitalism has brought about so many entrepreneurial heroes, so many great stories from, Amazon to, the founder of FedEx gambling when he thought
Right.
he was going to go in debt and saved everything. What's your favorite entrepreneurial story? Maybe one that you have bring up when you talk to people, or one that is close to you that maybe you've never even thought about?
So I love the Airbnb.
Mhm.
That's so Airbnb, is such a crazy idea. This guy was going to a conference in his hometown and all the hotels were sold out. So he's like, Brian Chesky. So he's like, okay, so let's rent out our floor. I mean, why not give it a try? Right. And so they did. And then they discovered, oh my goodness, there's this like cool thing. Whenever there are conferences in town, you probably can rent out your extra spaces. And they were getting it started and trying to get the tech done. And then they were running out of money and rent was due. So they literally created a cereal that they had repackaged. It was Cheerios, basically, in a box that was Obama O's. And they went to the national convention.
And
uh,
Captain McCain's.
Canes,
So
Captain
they had
McCain's, and
Wow.
Obama O's. And they sold like over $100,000 worth of this, and
Wow.
turned around and they made rent and they could keep the lights on.
Wow. That's
Can you
wild.
imagine? Can you imagine what that box would be worth now if
Oh,
you had one of them?
yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. I was actually yesterday interviewing. Have you heard about he's in his early 20s. He has Down syndrome. It's called Big John, or John's Crazy Socks.
Yeah,
We
we
were
just listened to
we were
that.
just listening to that interview.
Oh, okay. So my son's on the spectrum, and I've always thought, with these kids, the opportunities and the way society is, it's difficult. And it's fascinating to see how that blew up, how there was this simple idea, because we all have this fascination. Socks have become very hip, but we all wear socks. So
Right.
it's like the perfect thing. It's like you can't avoid it unless, you just refuse to. But anyways, it's fascinating how those things just kind of start out. And the most interesting thing that they said, that his dad said during that interview, was, if you go in thinking that you want to be the best, or you want to create this thing for you, it's not going to work.
Right.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
We tell this to entrepreneurs all the time. If you're getting into a startup because you want to make a lot of money and have a great exit, stop now. I mean, the likelihood of that is so low, it would not be worth investing your time. If you go into it because you have a problem you want to solve, and it turns out that the way you want to solve the problem is a way that other people want to solve the problem, that's what it is. Like, figure out the problems that need to be solved and a clever way to solve them. Be passionate about that, about
Yeah.
creating that change. And then, things might take off.
Yeah. If you could meet anybody alive on the planet right now, someone that either inspires you or fascinates you, who would you love to meet and talk to?
I have one off the top of my head. I can tell you,
Okay.
Dolly Parton. I grew up watching Dolly Parton on TV and all that. And as it turns out, I mean, her style of music isn't necessarily my favorite, but she's so smart. The way she held on to the rights to her music, so
Oh,
she
yeah.
a constant, and that way she's used that money, putting up money for the COVID vaccine, the little free libraries, the monies that she's giving to, students to go to college. I am just so impressed at what ideas were running around in her head and how she approached the world about the way she wants to solve problems.
My wife has a friend, their dog's name is Dolly Parton.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, that's one of the top answers, by the way. I'm always, it's like Oprah, Michelle Obama, Dolly Parton. It's like that's like the holy trinity right there.
Yep. Yep. I think so much of her.
Yeah. So how about you?
I was thinking there are a lot. I actually had the pleasure of meeting Randy Hetrick, founder of TRX.
Okay.
And how I built this conference. Kim and I have been mentors at that when Guy Raz held it in San Francisco, and just ran into him. And I'm looking in the mirror going, wait a minute, that guy next to me is Randy Hetrick. So he's got a really cool story. It was an honor to meet him. Probably Snoop Dogg is high up there because he's
Yeah.
very intriguing to me as an individual, and he's done a lot of good things business-wise as well as being an interesting and fun entertainer. And I just think he would be a blast to have a conversation with.
Yeah, he
It's
would be.
interesting to think about how, I mean, that part, the cannabis world is part of his world, but
Yeah.
also how prescient that that's where we are now.
I know it is, and I was thinking the other day, he put something up on Twitter and it was just a video. He probably had a little bit of a little too much of the cannabis, but he was talking about how be careful when we vote this time around and how much they wield influence and how much he does and how it is good that some of these people use their voices for a very prudent cause to get people to think about and wake up, you know?
Yeah.
So it's a good thing for sure. So let me ask you this. If you could see any event that happened in human history with your own eyes, to be right there and see it unfold, what would you love to have seen firsthand?
The launching of the Titanic.
Mhm.
Okay, see, there we go. Everything's full circle.
I mean, at the time, the amazing innovation that was the
Oh,
Titanic, from the size of it and the luxury to the steam engines, and there were so many, the telegraph, there's so many innovations on that ship. I just think it would have been amazing to be caught up in that day when it rolled out to sea.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I I would probably go much further back to the creation of the wheel
Yeah.
and them looking at each other going, they're going to be talking about reinventing this for centuries.
That's right. Oh man, I'm thinking of sliced bread now. There's all these
Yeah,
things.
exactly.
So
So,
another one that popped in my head is kind of a funny one, but it's also kind of stupid. So we, for our 50th birthdays, did Ironman Lake Placid, and when you finish the Ironman, you run on the ice skating rink.
yeah,
We're hiding.
Where he got Eric Heiden got all of the gold medals, and so
yeah.
at that time I was saying, like, I wish I was in the stands watching him, because I feel him while I am running across the finish line right now.
Someone at one point answered that and said, I want to be back at that Russia US game when they won the gold in 80, the hockey thing.
Oh
And I was
yeah.
like, wait, hold on a second. You want to be back there? He was like, oh, yeah, I was there. I was like, wow. I mean, because no one, even everybody that walked in there, no
Right.
one thought that we would win that. No one on
Right.
the planet, you
No.
know? So,
No.
yeah, to feel that kind of euphoria, I would
Yeah.
go back and see. You may not like this where you're coming from in Jersey. Maybe you would. I'd love to see the ball go underneath Billy Buckner's legs in Shea Stadium in '86.
Yeah,
If I could have
I
felt the
saw
crowd.
that live on TV. That's so unbelievable.
I mean, the way Vin Scully called that whole thing with Mookie, and the ball was flying and he was jumping and doing acrobats. But this is the weird thing. Billy Buckner was not supposed to be in the game. The original guy that plays,
Mhm.
because Billy Buckner had bad knees. So they would take him out when the weather got weird because it would get all like arthritic on him. And they only put him in because they were up and they thought they were going to win it. And they knew he was a veteran, wanted him out there. And the irony is,
Hmm.
it's what happened. It's
That's what
weird.
happens. Sometimes we make our own outcomes, I think.
Yeah. Uh-huh. We're our own worst enemies. So what is the motivation every day for you? Every day you wake up and you do your job, you have goals, you have things you want to do. What is the motivator for you?
Honestly, some days it's survival, right? That
So much to do.
so recently went on a trip and came back, and I wasn't feeling great on Saturday. Woke up Sunday feeling like crap, and I had gotten COVID. So
Wow.
it's like it's still out there, right? And,
Yeah.
and on days like that, it's like, hey, I just I want to wake up tomorrow morning and be able to do. But the far majority of the time, it kind of gets back to that helping innovators at different levels kind of realize their dreams of change, and that's what keeps me going, keeps me enthused, and is kind of my mantra, is to just try and run into more of folks like that and help in any way I can.
Mine is a little simpler. I mean, right now I got a really heavy teaching load in the fall. And so every day I wake up thinking about my students. What do my students need from me? How am I going to help them? I figure when they email me, they're thinking about it. So if I can get back to them while they're still thinking about something, I can have a bigger impact. But I was just looking at some results in one of my classes, and I see a student who had been ranked around, at the bottom of the class. And with this latest thing, he's up near the top of the class.
Nice.
I just love to see, like, when somebody, maybe it takes them a little while, but then they find their stride and they have mastered something that they never ever thought they could do before. It just makes me feel so great.
So speaking of youth, let's say you have a dream tonight and you run into that college version of yourself. And based on what you've lived through and the wisdom you've gained and the things that you've overcome, if you could give that young version of you a piece of advice, what would you tell him?
I would probably encourage, I was not risk averse, but there were things that I didn't do that I would encourage myself to take more risks. And I don't mean like go bungee jumping off a cliff without, a backup. But, just expose yourself to new and different things, because I think that makes all of us, helps all of us grow, and is a source of inspiration. That said, when I look back, like, I feel like we've had a darn good run and are very happy personally and professionally. So, like, I don't know if you believe in like chaos theory, butterfly, effect, that kind of stuff, but little changes can have big ripple throughs. And like, I wouldn't want my life to have been different. I'm really pleased with where I am, and our family, our daughters are doing great. So, like, anything that would upset that apple cart, I'd probably be reluctant to change too much.
So in
So
this
what, Mark?
relationship, I'm more of the planner, but I don't do a 5 or 10 year or life plan very well. And sometimes that's made me feel a little uncomfortable, like I should have more of a plan.
Yeah.
And I would tell myself, don't have a plan.
Right.
Just let the doors open, take the opportunities. I can think of one opportunity I turned down. I do sometimes wish I had gone through that door. So I would tell myself, go through the door, see what happens.
And I was definitely never part of her plan. So
Definitely.
See, there you go. Exactly. Existentialism, there's something to be said about it. Just wiping it clean and wait for Godot. It's interesting because Mark Twain once said he doesn't regret what he did in his life. He regrets what he didn't do, So that's the big thing. So at the end of the day, everyone out there has a perception of you as a couple and as an individual. Family, friends, students, readers of your book, but you ultimately run the show. What is your perception of you?
So I think there's a lot of overlap. I mean, at least around our university, a lot of people introduce us as the dynamic duo. And I don't mean Batman and Robin. And I think that does really apply, I think, to in a professional capacity and even in a friendship fun capacity. When you get the both of us, you really get something amazing. It's 2 + 2 is actually more like 10. And so I think a lot of people think that way, and that's how we see ourselves. We see ourselves as, how can we be together having a bigger impact than either one of us could have separately?
So a couple things. First, I totally agree with that. And the way I see myself is kind of as a connector and enabler. We have the good fortune, because we've been in this community a while, and a lot of our alums, because of the programs we teach in, stay in the central Indiana area. So if you think about kind of degrees of separation between people who should know each other and can help each other, if we can kind of shorten those degrees of separation to 1 or 2 instead of 4 or 5 steps, that can be the difference between an entrepreneur being successful in 3 months or running out of money in 12 months, right? So, so that's kind of how I see myself. But also, there's a piece of that is like, how do you like or want others to see you? And I like the different roles I play, like, being revealed over time. Like, I like to be a little bit of a mystery. Like, people see me as, oh, he's the teacher and he teaches strategy, and not realizing, oh, wait, he's done an Ironman, or, he was you know, those kinds of things. And I like for that to kind of unfold over time, where people like discover a different dimension of me that they, and those aren't always good, right? Sometimes
Right.
they're bad sides, but so I like that unveiling process over time of getting to know others, but also you know, sharing who I am as a whole person instead of the slice and role that they see when I'm at the front of the classroom or when I'm, you know, in the audience at a venture event.
For sure. So if anyone wants to pick up the Titanic Effect, learn more about you, reach out to you, anything about your world, where do they go?
Well, so they can go to Amazon for the Titanic Effect, or any bookstore really, but we also have a website, the titaniceffect.com. And then you can find us at the IU Kelley School of Business. We're the only Saxton, so you can type in Saxton and you'll find us.
Right on. Kim, Todd, thank you so much for your time today. I did want to say, when you were talking about the separation, I actually found a board game, 7 Degrees of Kevin Bacon, and it was a
Oh.
wildly entertaining board game. I just couldn't believe how much fun it was,
That's
because you
hilarious.
all
Well,
know these people. There's all
Right.
these little, the Venn diagrams always believe together somehow, you
For
know?
sure.
exactly.
So,
Find
well,
those
hey,
connections.
yes, exactly. Well, it's been great to get to know you. Thank you for opening up. Thank you for your story. Best of luck with the book and everything else. I appreciate it.
Thanks. Good to
Appreciate your
talk to you.
time.
Great talking to you. Take care.
Have a great
Bye.
See you. Bye-bye.